So the first use case and the first solution that we've developed is the automation of the deployment of SAP HANA database with Ansible Tower. It's an end-to-end deployment. So since we are provisioning till we have the HANA database installed and running, and we can hand it over to the SAP basis team. Here we can see the diagram or the workflow of what we are going to do. So it's similar to what we saw at the beginning of the introduction of Ansible and how things were done before the automation came in play. So instead of doing every step separately by separate teams, we are doing everything together. As we can see, there's a box containing everything. So we have the hardware. So apart from that, or from then on, we do the rest of the things in just one workflow that's been defined in Ansible Tower. So the installation of the operating system, the creation of the virtual machine we're using, virtualization, then the patching and the configuration of the operating system to make it suitable to the for the installation of SAP HANA, then the validation, and then, as I said, then we hand over to the SAP business team so they can start managing the HANA database. Okay, so we can see, as we saw before, how the system admin will trigger the playbooks. In this case, we're going to use just a workflow that's been defined in Ansible Tower. So let's take a look at Tower, and let's first have a walk around to see how it works, what its structure looks like, etc. Okay, so we can see here the URL to connect to the Ansible automation platform. It was called before Ansible Tower. Many people still call it Ansible Tower. So we just log on. We will log on as admin, but you can log on as any other user that you have defined in your system. So as we said, to build a security baseline, so each user will have access just to some views, to some playbooks, etc. Here we go to the dashboard. We can see here the number of hosts that are connected to our tower. Then if there are hosts where some jobs have failed, the inventories that we have defined for the different hosts, if there are any issues with the dynamic inventory, if we are using it, if it's having issues to sync to some of the servers in our landscape, then the projects that we will see in more detail in a bit, and we will see what the projects are. If there are problems with those projects synchronizing, and then, well, the job stages. So this is a good way to keep an eye on what jobs have been executed, for statistics as well, how the tower is being used, which are the servers that are being more affected, or where more jobs have been running. If any of them are failing for some reason, we need to review the servers, the connection, how the projects are synchronized, etc. So then let's go to inventories. We can see here for this training, we have defined a group of inventories, or an inventory group, sorry, that's called SAP host. Okay, if we go to SAP host, we can see some variables that we will see in a bit as well, but let's go back to inventories. Let's see hosts, and we can see more groups here. So we have 2 servers that are for HANA installations, okay, where we will run the installation of the database. And there's another server where we will run the S4 HANA installation, the application installation, in another video. But for the moment, we're going to just to work with these 2 HANA. If we go back to inventories, we've seen that we had defined some variables. So these variables are defined at our inventory level, as we can see, so they will affect to all the servers that are in our inventory. So this is another thing about the level of nesting of variables and how we want to modify or add variables depending on the host that we are going to be using the playbooks on. As we said, this is the top of our inventory, and these variables will affect all of them. What have we do here? So yeah, some variables to be able to modify the etc host files in the server so that they can be talking to each other in the installation and then in the normal activity. Some other variables for one of the system roles that I will explain later on what they entail and what they do. Also about the host agent installation that we're going to use. So SAP host agent has to be installed in all the servers. So for the HANA servers, and also we will install it in the application server as for HANA. So since this is global, this is going to be this is going to apply to all the servers. That's why we have defined all these variables in the topmost level. And the type of installation for the SAP host agent, where the software will be placed. All the path to the server. Then if we go to the group of HANA servers, or where we go to the HANA servers, here, we will have some more variables only for them. So for example, for this, we will have the variables to partition the file systems and, to partition the disks and create the file systems that will be needed for the HANA installation. So the HANA shared, the data file file system and the log file system. So we can absolutely modify here the mount points, also the size that we need. So this is good to have a template, as I mentioned before. If we know that every so often we need to provision new HANA servers with a certain amount of resources, we can create our template here with fixed amount of resources, of disk, of memory, etc., and just run it whenever we want. We can use also dynamic variables, and so that we can change this dynamically. It's another big advantage. There's also the type of installation that we use for the database, the path to where the software is. So normally the most common practice is to have an NFS server sharing all the software, and it will be accessed by Tower, or it can be even in the server where Ansible Tower is installed, and it will be shared across the servers where we are going to perform the installations. Okay. So for the other HANA server, we'll have the same, because we are going to do an installation of exactly the same HANA system, so that later on in another video we can create, we can enable the HANA system replication and create a pacemaker cluster to have high availability. That's why we'll have exactly the same variables for those two HANA servers. Okay. And then for the S/4HANA, we will look at it in all the video when we will do the installation of the application, so we will take a closer look at the variables for it. So those are the inventories. Here we have all the access. So the most granular part of the access is users. In this example, since I will be the only one running the playbooks, I'm using the admin user and that's it. But here we would create a user for each person that will be logging onto the tower and running the playbooks. We will give the role-based access control. So depending on the team each user belongs to, they will have different accesses. So as we said, some of the users, for example, the network team, will have access only to the network-related playbooks that are stored in the tower. The SAP basis team will have only access to these playbooks, for example, to the installation, or some playbooks to monitor the SAP hosts and things like that. So this is done at user level, but also at team level and organization level. So teams, we haven't defined any either, because we just have one user, as we said. But here we would define, for example, what we just said, the network team, the SAP's basis team, the infrastructure team, the OS team. We have all of them here, and we can add permissions also at team level, and then organizations that can be anything in your company. So for example, if you want to have an organization for all the financial related hosts, so you will have the teams that manage the host for that part of the organization. If you want to have another organization for the HR part of it, you will have it here as well. As we said before, Ansible Tower or Ansible Platform is the way to control, or the only point of entry and control of all your IT infrastructure, and it provides the possibility, or the features, or allows you to treat and handle your infrastructure as code, which is the tendency of many companies at the moment. So anything that you need to do in your infrastructure, be it at application level, operating system, or virtual machine level, can be done with Ansible Tower and Ansible as code. You don't need to physically do anything anymore, and that's one of the beauties of Ansible. Okay, so here we can create scripts that will be targeting inventories or servers of our inventory. For example, if we want to run certain tasks every day of monitoring servers or starting or shutting servers that are not going to be used overnight, we can have those scripts here that will apply to, as we said, certain servers in the inventory. And then let's take a look at what is really important when we are going to use the playbooks. So the most basic part is to create a project. Okay, here we can see the different projects. So there will be, or the best practice is to create a project per playbook, okay, or per role that we are going to use. So if we are going to, for example, create, as we saw, or partition the disk and create the file systems for an SAP HANA installation, we will have a playbook for that, and we will create a project associated to it. If we go inside, we can see we can here also add variables at a project level if we need to. But the main thing here is to say what the source for this playbook or this project will be. So here we have put the URL of a GitHub repo where we have all our SAP related playbooks and roles. Okay, so it will be connected to this. Another very good thing is that Ansible Tower uses CI/CD, so continuous integration, continuous deployment. That means instead of having to use, for example, other CI/CD tools like Jenkins, you can just use Tower, but you can integrate those other CI/CD tools as well. You can also use GitHub options and GitHub applications as a CI/CD tool as well. So that every time you modify or any developer modifies anything on the GitHub repository and pull request is created, and that modification and pull request is accepted and it goes into production in the repository, that will be fed back to Tower. So it will be updated, and Tower will be running all the time the latest update of the code. Okay, the latest version. So that's very important as well, so that we don't have differences or drifts between the code that developers are using and testing and what is being used in production. So the moment it is accepted, it will be used in production with Tower. Okay, we have all the other types of sources, not only the GitHub repositories, but we have also Mercurial. Sorry, this can be also connected to Red Hat Insights Tower, so they can integrate together. We will see this use case in a bit. Okay, we can define notifications as well for the projects. For each time a playbook or the role is run, we can configure some notifications to make sure that nothing goes unnoticed. For example, we can schedule their execution, etc. So the next level is to create a template using the projects. So here we can see that also we have associated a template to every project that we have. We go back to the SAP storage. We have created a template for that. Okay, with a description. Here we specify the host it will be limited to, or where this template or this workflow will be run. So it will be limited to SAP host. So this way we make sure that these actions or these tasks won't be executed in a server that where we don't want them to be run. Okay, we can here we specify the project that is linked to, and here the credentials. So as we were saying, SSH is used to connect to any server that uses a Unix-based, that has a Unix-based operating system. For Windows systems, we said that we use WinRM, so we would use Windows key. But what we do is always to upload the keys securely to Ansible Tower, so that we don't need at any moment to enter any password. We can do it as well at a playbook level, and we will see this as well. So if we need some password for an installation that we are going to do, we can specify it and we can see it here. But the best practices are to use, apart from the SSH key, to use some other security features that are called Ansible vaults, so that all the passports are hashed. They are not in clear view. You cannot read them. So you will still be able to run the playbooks if you have permissions to it, but you won't see the passwords. So that's the best practice. Here we can see the options. So this enabled privilege escalation is what we saw when we were taking a look at on a sample of the playbook, where we said that we could become the user with elevated privileges to run tasks. Normally we enable concurrent jobs so that a job can be run in different servers at the same time. For example, here that we are going to run the installation of HANA in 2 servers at the same time. We will enable the concurrent jobs. Here, that's where we store the credentials. Okay, so this is the SSH key that will be used, as we just saw, to connect to the servers and run the playbooks there. But we can add any type of credentials, as we said, like for example, hyperscalers credentials. If you have an Azure account and you're going to run playbooks on virtual machines that you have created with your account, you can store them there. So any type of credentials can be stored here. As I said, it has very complex layer of security, Ansible Tower. If we go back to templates, these are the workflows that we have defined using the other templates. So if we go to the SAP HANA deployment, for example, well, this is we can take a look at the workflow visualizer. So here you will see, I'm going to zoom in because otherwise it's going to be a bit difficult to see. Just with drag and drop, we can create a workflow with all the projects, that means, and all the templates, that means all the playbooks that we want to run, to create a whole pipeline and end-to-end deployment. So from here, we will execute tasks to install the virtual machine, to install the operating system, and then register the operating system, which is RHEL. In this case, it's a RHEL 8. Register it to the RHEL for SAP channels, so in order to have all the software that is related to SAP for RHEL, to have it available. So it will be registered with Subscription Manager. Then we have this SAP storage, that's what we saw, to configure the file systems to install SAP HANA. Then we will install the SAP host agent, and then we will run some roles that are called SAP system roles. And what they do is to apply all the nodes that SAP delivers or with the prerequisites to install SAP HANA. Well, this one in particular is called SAP Preconfigure, so it has nodes that are common to SAP HANA installations and SAP NetWeaver and S4 HANA installations. So all the nodes that are common for both will be installed. And here we have some other roles. So SAP HANA Preconfigure, that will only apply the nodes that are for SAP HANA installations. Okay, so in this video we'll stop here. We will run up to here, but won't go further with the installation of the application layer. We will do that in a different video. So what we will do is to edit this this pipeline so that you can see how to edit it and what we want to stay with. So it's as easy as just deleting the steps that we won't need here. We will need the SAP NetWeaver preconfigure because that's to apply the nodes for the SAP NetWeaver or for HANA installation. So we will just delete it. What else do we have in here? So this is the SAP HANA deployment that will install the SAP HANA in both servers, because we've seen that when we looked at the template, it said host, and we had the group of SAP HANA, so it will be applied. The scope of the playbook will be the 2 HANA hosts, and we will delete this because this is the next tier, the next layer, the application of the S4 HANA application. And we will delete this as well because this is the configuration of HANA system replication. And also we will see this in another video. For the moment, we will delete this. We will delete this. We save it. And just before launching it, another important point is that after any step, we can add a survey. With this survey, this is an acceptance step or a validation step. So, for example, if after the host has been subscribed to the rel for SAP channels, to the right repos, if we need to validate that, we can add a survey there. So the workflow will pause until we have accepted and validated this. Then we can continue the execution. So that's another very useful point for workflows. Okay, so after we have done that, we just need to go to the template that we want to run. This one, for example, and either click launch here or here in the rocket, or whatever we prefer. Let's do it here. And let's see what it looks like. So we will see the whole workflow that we just saw. If I zoom in a bit, and we can see that now this details word has appeared in the box that is currently being executed. So if we go into details, we will see the log of the playbook and how it is, everything that it's doing. So just what we saw before when we were taking a look at the playbooks and the syntax, etc., we saw that for each task we give a name and a relevant name so that we can track and know what it's doing. So here you can say, what is being done at its moment. So the task that is being used. So as we said, this playbook, after having the virtual machine ready, is registering the operating system to the rel for SAP channels, and as I said, making those repos available so that we can download the SAP system rules that apply all these SAP pre-requirements that we needed. Gives access also to the high availability repository so that we can download and apply the software to deploy the pacemaker clusters, etc. So yeah, basically we will have a real-time following of the execution here. So SAP repositories has finished. SAP storage has finished as well, because we can see that step in green. And now we are running the installation of the SAP host agent. If we go to the SAP storage, we can see the same. So all the tasks that have been done. So set the list of volumes for verification, remove the obsolete mounts if there are any. Set up the current mounts, create the logical volumes, etc. But the host agent has been deployed already. Okay, so it's done everything that it needed. And right now it must be in the SAP pre-configure step. So as we said, this one is applying all the SAP nodes that are required for both SAP HANA and SAP NetWeaver or SAP application installation. So it has quite a few nodes, so this will take a bit longer. In the meantime, we can log on to the servers if we want, just to see what's being done. Right now, I've logged on to the Bastion server that we are using, where the Ansible Tower is, and what we are using as jump host to connect to the different hosts that are involved in this installation. So we can connect to the HANA 1 server, for example. Yes. Okay, and we should be able to see already the file systems for the HANA installation, because as we saw, the playbook has succeeded. That part of the workflow has been done. So we'll look at we can see there that we have the HANA data, HANA log, and HANA shared file systems. So just for those of you who don't know, when you're going to install SAP HANA, you need to create 3 file systems. So the HANA shared will have all the installation, and we'll have all the binaries needed for the working for HANA to work, and all the scripts and everything that's going to be created and copied to the HANA shared directory. Then the data files of the database are in HANA data, and all the log files where all the transactions are being recorded are in HANA log. Okay, so this has been created. We can see the size. That's that we saw that in the variables that we were given 128 gigs to the HANA data file system, 64 to the HANA log, and 256 to the HANA shared. Okay, and we can already see, since the host agent has been installed, we should be able to see something where some processes with that running with that user, with the SAP ADM user. So let's see. Oh, sorry, this is typo. No. Okay, so here we can see that the host agent is running, okay, and with user SAP ADM, that's the admin user for the SAP host agent. So let's go back to the tower now, and let's see where we are. So now it's applying the nodes for the nodes that are particularly important for SAP HANA. So also installing the packages for that. So if we go back to the operating system at the moment, we won't see any database or anything if we try to look for, the SID, the name of the instance of SAP HANA that we are using, we are setting the variables is RHA. So the user that will be created to administrate the database will be RHA ADM. So at the moment, since the installation has not started yet, we don't have that user. So just so you see that there's nothing installed at the moment here. We go to the other HANA server, we will see the same. We can see the right file systems being there, okay. We can see the SAP ADM user running the SAP host agent. Okay, but no RHA ADM user so far. Sorry. If we try to change to RHA ADM, there's nothing. So we will wait until the installation of SAP HANA has completed. Okay, so these nodes for SAP HANA have been successfully applied. So 73 different tasks. There were 30 that were that had no relevance for these servers, or for this installation. Okay, so we are now at the last step of the HANA deployment. So now the database is being installed. That will be the last step of this video. Let's see what it's doing. If we want to take a closer look at the tasks that are being executed here. Well, another thing to notice here is that every time we run a playbook, the first task is gathering facts. What it's doing is to gather all the features of the server, or all the hardware, all the resources that it has. So each time that a playbook is run, by default is doing this. We can skip this, and there's a keyword, or there's an option in Ansible when we write a playbook to skip the gathering facts, because we might not need it, and it just takes time. Okay, so we have this whole workflow now, the whole pipeline that has finished. We can see here the total elapsed time. So it's been 22 minutes for an end-to-end deployment of SAP HANA, which is really, really quick. And as we were saying, compared to the time that it normally used to take with provisioning the virtual machines, installing the operating system, applying all the nodes node by node manually, which is a real pain. And now it's done by the SAP system roles, so the SAP pre-configure, SAP HANA pre-configure, then doing the installation of the host agent and the installation of HANA. 22 minutes is nothing, really nothing. It makes the life of SAP basis administrators much, much easier. So me coming from that background, I really appreciate what can be done with Ansible and automation in general. So if we look at the logs of the last step of the installation, once more, you can see, if we go back to the system and we now try to change to the admin user RHADM, we will see, oh sorry, because I was not a privileged user, so let me go back. I changed to root first, and then I will log on as the admin user. Then if we look at the HANA processes, we will see that they're all there. So the HANA database is up and running with the index server, name server, all of the processes. Let's do the same on the other HANA host. Log onto it, change to root, and then to the admin user of the HANA installation. And we do the same. We can see all the processes running there. Okay, so when we want to enable the HANA system replication in a later video, we will do it between these two servers, HANA 1 and HANA 2, and we will see how they communicate, how we can check the status of the replication with the Python scripts, etc. The cluster will be created with both servers as well. And the installation of the S4 HANA of the application will be done in the other server, in the S4 HANA server. Okay, so this is it for this use case for the end-to-end deployment of an SAP HANA installation with the provisioning of the server. So I hope this is clear for you and that you've learned how to do this in a very, very easy way with Ansible.